Lake Beach or valley in Basilia is from. Cassie, Lake Ennis, Laying. I wonder if I could smell it on the glass itself. I glanced sidelong at him, though he had acted strangely before. Now there was a feverish look to his eyes. The words tumbled from his mouth so quickly, they were nearly unintelligible through his hell. The augury, I guessed. It had been working on him all this time, I suspected, and now it was at its zenith. I wondered what he was now, somewhere inside that suit. Then there was a click of a door, not from our side, but the other. I looked up, and they entered the room. The first striking thing about them was their clothing, if it was clothing at all. From their necks to their knees, they wore not shirts, nor jerkin, nor hose, but rather what first appeared to be a shapeless, formless tangle of papers and parchments. I squinted and saw that the papers were attached to a set of underlying ropes by string or pins or adhesives, and were not of uniform size or type. There were many colours and shades of paper, with some large and neat, and others crumpled, and some no more than torn off corners. All the papers were covered in scribblings and text and numbers, equations and calculations and paragraphs, all rendered in smeary ash pen. There were notes, I realised. The two augurs made so many notes, and had secured so many of them to their bodies, that they had almost come to resemble sheep, their figures white and plump and rustling. I studied the augurs' faces as they entered. They were grey-skinned like myself, yet they were not simply bald, but totally hairless, their heads completely depilated. Like Grelin and Bellenai, their faces were smudged with ash and ink, which made it difficult for me to determine their sex. But one was a woman, I thought, and the other a man, though perhaps these terms meant nothing to beings of such a saying. Perhaps the augurs, like some folk of the innermost cantons, had dispensed with such concepts altogether. The two augurs walked to the barrier and looked at me, their faces so close to the glass that twin flowers of steam bloomed below their nostrils. There was something inaccessible to their gaze, as if they did not truly have eyes, but rather the images of eyes painted on stones sitting within their sockets. The augurs stared at me for a long while before fumbling about in their coats of parchments. They produced a set of boards that hung from their necks by ribbons. Then they sat down before the glass, placed the boards in their laps, and then tap tap, tap, tap tap tap. I watched as their fingers danced over the boards, their fingertips so dark with ash pen, they left smears of black behind. There was a silence, then slowly Grelin picked up one of the boards from our half of the room. He took a deep breath, tapped out a response. The design and framing of the boards made the taps quite loud. For the first time, the augurs looked at it. Then they began tapping again, their fingers rapidly flying on the wood. Grelin responded, tapping back, and they drummed out another response. This went on for some time, and as it did, the moods of all three began to change, growing relaxed yet also excited. They were adjusting themselves to one another, I thought, like dancers moving with a new partner, trying to adjust to this person's height and weight and speed, yet enticed by the newness of it all. Finally, the tapping ceased, and Grelin turned to look at me. His pupils were wide and dilated, and when he spoke, there was something misty to his voice. I will speak for them now, he said, as best I can. I will no longer speak for myself. Is this known? The last three words were sharp and long. Yes, sir. Grelin stood, walked closer to the glass, turned to face me and sat on the floor. The male augur sat in a position over his right shoulder, and the female on his left. Grelin's eyes closed within his helm, and all seemed to go dark within, like the man himself had vanished, and only shadow remained. The augurs studied me, their eyes wide and earnest, yet unknowable. Then the male one tapped out a message on his board. Grelin dipped his head toward the male, and said in a dreamy voice, Iudex. They said a Iudex was coming to talk to us, but there's a narrow shaping to your eyes, and an undercolour of pale brown to your dermis. Are you Tala? I looked at Grelin, confused. It took me a moment to adjust to the absurdity of the situation. The augur's words coming out of Grelin's mouth, like the man's body was being used as his voice box. Then the female began tapping. Grelin's head dipped toward her, and when he spoke again, his voice was slightly different, taller, wryer, and without a trace of warmth. Tala he is, said the woman. Fluctuations in the pupil, slightest whitening, a shift in the shoulders. He heard truth. This is a Tala man, and a young one at that. He moves too quick. The male augur tapped again, and Grelin dipped his head back the other way and spoke. Tala is far from here. The augur rummaged in his paper suit and pulled out a single note tied to a string, held it high, and tapped again on his board. Less than 7% of all serving inferior officers in Yarodale are of Tala stock. This is known, though these numbers are from some time ago. Then the woman, cold and harsh. Mostly Ratras and Kermini and Pythian here. Peoples who grew up by rivers, by the Hagoth works, old empire folk whose tribes knew the domain of the emperors long before the march to the sea. Familiar with the smell of reagents and the scent of the smokes. The man, you are unusual here, and a Iudex officer has never entered the shroud before. This is known here in the inner layer. We share, we remember. The woman, digging in her own suit, salvaged some measly scrap of smudged parchment and proudly held it high. Then she tapped one-handed. I have predicted the arrival of a Iudex consulate soon. I have predicted this. The transition from Yarrow to Empire will come with pain. The presence of such a being is inevitable. But even so, tapped the man, such a person would not send one young Tala man to the shroud all alone. No, no, you are not part of that entourage. The woman dropped her note and cocked her head. So why now, and why a Tala man of all folk? Then the man. But then, Tala lies so close to those hallowed grounds, the Titan's far from the sea walls, and Tala Grey. The woman dipped forward, eyes wide and keen. Have you served in Tala Grey, Iudex? Have you walked in the shadow of the sea walls, and the path of the plains, with its ancient cenotaphs and strange blooms? My suit suddenly felt very hot. The ghost of a smile crossed the woman's face. She tapped out. He has. See the stillness to his gaze, the measured movements as he breathes within his suit. This boy is full of grafts, but he is not broken. There is steel in his eye and sand in his spine. And his visit here was not planned, tapped the man, for the suit is not arranged well, baggy at the knees and hips, tight at the shoulders. It was not grown for you, even though it takes but 10 days to grow an algae cloth suit for a person. So why, tapped the woman, why is such an accomplished UNIX officer coming here so quickly and so unplanned? Unless something very wrong has happened on the shore. Murder, death, disaster, catastrophe. Tell us, which is it? Tell us, please, UNIX. Tell us. I watched as Grelin twitched where he sat, but he was possessed by the figures on the other side of the glass. No less unnerving with the experience of listening to these two, my eyes flicking back and forth as one spoke, then the other, an alternating volley of taps and words. I am here, I said very carefully, to ask about a man who served with you as augur some time ago. The two augurs slowly turned to look at each other. The meaning of their gaze was unreadable to me, but they held it for a long moment. Then they turned back, and the woman tapped out a short and simple message. Grelin spoke for her. Are you here to ask of Sunus Pictis? My blood flushed hot. I tried not to let my eyes react too much. Yes, I said evenly. How do you know this? Another long silence. The augur sat there, inscrutable. Then the woman dug in her suit and held up a tiny scrap of paper covered in scribblings before tapping again on her board. Grelin spoke for her. This was known, UNIX. This was predicted. We have projected that these events may come to pass. How did you predict this? I asked. The woman shook her head and replaced the note within her suit. Then she tapped again. He lives. He lives. Yet how is this so? I cannot tell you, I said. I am here only to ask about his service in this place. More tapping from the woman. We will tell you about his service here if you tell us of his acts in the world beyond. Then the man. For his service here was strange and troubled, though most could not see it. We did. When he perished, tapped the woman, we thought it wrong even then. Such a clumsy mistake, such a blundering. From Sunus Pictis, the golden child who could do no wrong. Then the man. The augur whom all marveled at, brightest among the bright, most brilliant among the brilliant. The woman said, no. The man said, no. It was wrong, all of it wrong. This we knew, this was known. The woman leaned close, her nose nearly touching the glass. And when we were told the UNIX was coming to talk to us, and only us, the man then, yes, he has been found, he lives. The woman, we have been ready for you, UNIX. We can say much, just tell us. What has he done out there? Is he safe at home? I watched as their fingers fluttered out these final messages. Then they went totally cold and still, as if refusing to grant me any hint of information. Yet I noted they were concerned with Pictis' safety. They did not think him a murderer or a criminal, and had not yet contemplated that I was here because of some act he had done. I wondered what to do. Then I realized all this felt rather familiar, didn't it? Didn't I know very well how to deal with a person so ravenous for information? I said, aren't you wise enough to determine the answers by what I cannot say, as opposed to what I can? Their faces flickered. I caught a flash of anger, perhaps. Then the woman tapped, and when Grelin spoke, his voice was cold and resentful. Flirtatious, at ease, I dislike this. More tapping from the man, and Grelin said, he has been told the rules, yes. Swallowed them up, swilled them about, how foul. Delanai has gotten to him, said the woman. Told him not to tell us a thing. Cruel, cruel Delanai. Cruel, cruel Delanai, said the man. No more, nothing new. Instead, we shall eat only innards and nerve clusters and no more. The woman. Bones and sinew, veins and viscera. The man. Lots of blood and strings of membranes. The woman. Why do you condemn us to such a fate? You ask of us and we shall ask of you. It is only fair. I stayed silent, wondering if I should ask another question or wait it out. In many ways, this was rather like how I often dealt with Anna, though the augur seemed more alien than erratic. Then the woman cocked her head and tapped out. Oh, do you see that? I waited and did not move. The woman tapped again. I do not like how he blinks so little. Such a paucity of eye movement. Does this Thala man seem accustomed to us? The man grew excited. Does he? I think so, yes. We startle him not at all, and he moves so little. Has he met augurs before? Said the woman. Has he dallied in their company so? How could that be if augurs are only here, and no UNIX has ever come to this place? The man. Has he met an augur, or, he cocked his head, or something like an augur? The woman. Tell us, boy, have you held parley with a being akin to us? I swallowed, disliking this shift in the conversation. I did not wish for them to ask me about Anna, who suddenly, startlingly, in fact, did seem very similar to them. If they grew too interested in her, I felt sure they would eat up the whole of our time asking about her. I remembered the rules Stella and I had said. I was not to answer any of their questions or listen to their predictions. But I needed to say something now. Something startling that would send their augmented minds barreling down another path entirely. Time enough to dispense with the rules, then. I said, Pictis lives. He means great harm. I must know more of him to stop it. The augurs blinked in unison at that. Again, they shared a cryptic glance. Then they began tapping, and Grelin shuddered as he spoke for them. The man, now worried. Great harm? This cannot be not Pictis. The woman. Sunus Pictis was a troubled thing, a tortured man, but he was not a villain. This was not predicted. I cannot fathom this. I said nothing. The woman tapping slower, quieter. He means truth. His eyes do not waver. He thinks Pictis a criminal thing. Man, I cannot comprehend this. Not from our Pictis. Not from the man I once called friend and brother. The woman, her tone sharp. Called him such we may have, but he never called us so, not in his heart. Another silence. I sensed consternation now. They began tapping again. Grelin, shuddering, shivering, spoke once more. We will tell you what Pictis, said the woman, for though he was a puzzle to us, a thing lovely yet unknowable, we hurry now. The man, soft and tremulous. If we were wrong about him, then all our predictions, all our calculations, they now sit askew. The woman shook her head and tapped out. It cannot be. We are his last defense, then. It was difficult to know, but we knew him best, and we know he must be innocent, whatever we imagine. The man, what do you wish to know, Eunuchs? All you saw of him, he said. Start at the beginning, please. Chapter 46. The male augur began to tap, and as he did, Grelin chanted in his dreamy, misty cadence, his head lolling back and forth as the words coursed through him. Small and secretive and strange our order is, said the man, but if it were to have saints, surely soon as Pictus would sit among them. So wisely did he serve. The stories were told to us when we first passed through the veil to serve, said the woman, for he was best and brightest of us, a man without peer. Quiet and modest, said the man, humble to the point of effacement. Yet the stories were loud and grand, even if he was not, said the woman. It was Pictus who pioneered the use of holy muck to bind the Titan's arrow, winding it up in ossuary moss and smuggling the secrets of their flesh away for us to study. He did not invent it, the man corrected her gently, but he made the most advances with it. He guided it through their tissue like a needle through cloth, the woman said. The man's wide, shallow eyes danced up and down my figure, and he tapped. You know of the marrow. I feel you may have even laid eyes upon our prize. You know that when the wet seasons are high, the legion fells a chitin. We augurs wend through the depths of these great rotting entities, passing through chambers and veins and hollows like the deepest of mines. It is we who heat their bodies, their flesh, tapped the woman, like dowsers in steps, sensing sleeping water beneath earth clay. This is no easy task. It takes many minds, and powerful minds at that, to read the flesh of the Leviathans. We work in groups, said the man. Politia is the word. Groups of three who live together, labor together, learn together. In a politia, we become one, said the woman. One mind, one stream of thought, one entity. And Pictus was a member of your politia? I asked. The woman's hands tapped out a message, and Grelin breathlessly translated. He was our eldest, our prefecto politia. We were his juniors, serving with him during his third, final year. He was to drum the beat of our lives. It was an honor to serve with him. Then the man, cautious, anxious. Yet, we augurs are skilled at learning the natures of folk. This is most important in a politia. To doubt your colleagues while pondering the Titan's breast, that is certain death. But when it came to Pictus... Pictus was bright, brilliant, but also unreachable, unknowable, said the woman. He would give us truths, offer us data, but it was only data, information, facts. The man, where he was born? Para, Rathras, far to the southeast. The woman again. His mother, beloved and beautiful, who had perished when he was a young man. His desire, endless and passionate, to bring betterment to the empire, healing and growth and restoration. His perfect marks, perfect scores, perfect service record. It was data, records. It was not knowledge, not comprehension. The man, wistfully, dreamily. To serve with him was akin to loving a person made of glass, so difficult to perceive, so still, so cold, so hard to the touch. They lapsed into a meditative silence. Yet, I noted, love. They had loved him. I recalled what Grelin had told me. Relationships there are very different. He lived a story then, I said, and hid his true self, is that it? The augurs frowned. The woman riffled through her coat of notes and produced yet another smeary piece of parchment, which she studied like it was sacred script. Then she absently tapped on her board with one hand, and Grelin translated. No, not entirely, for sometimes he did show one side of himself so hidden, during the days of remembrance. I recalled Grelin mentioning these as we toured the reagent crates. The days of remembrance, what are those? It is a holy day upon the shroud every 6 months, explained the man. It is on these days that we memorialize the ones we have lost. Augurs and officers killed in our duties, laboring away on the carcasses of these great mysteries. Devoured by contagion, tapped the woman. Sickness, madness, plague. The woman. During these holy days, we read the names of those who have perished in the past months. We thank them for their service and pledge our love to remember them always. And it was on these days, only these 2 days, that I saw that Pictus wept. Wept, I said. The man tapped rapidly. Yes, he wept. Wept with anguish, wept with agony. I have never seen a person weep so. It pained him, said the woman. So great was his pain that I asked him of it. He said to me, does your family think you shall die in this place? I said I did not know, but I assumed they had accepted my fate, whatever it was to be. I had chosen to serve, after all. He thought on this, and then said, my father expects me to die here. I said that could not be so. No father could truly expect such a thing. But then he... Pause in her tapping. Then... He grew angry. He grew so angry at this comment, and he withdrew, and we could not find him. He disappeared, I asked. The woman issued a single set of taps. Yes. But the shroud is a contained place, yes? I asked. The man tapped in response. Contained, yes, but also enormous, especially here on the inner layer. When we too searched for him, we found nothing. He returned to us, eventually. Yet he was cold and aloof, and we feared to ask of it. The woman. After that, his behavior became more frequent. He would disappear to some place within the shroud, some place we could not find. When he returned, he would be moody and distant. We could not comprehend it. The man limply tapped upon his board, and Grelin slowly translated. We thought the culprit was the end of his term. Too much augury, too much time on trial. The mind breaks down. The woman. It is why we serve only 3 years. The personality undergoes shifts, often dangerous ones. It is like the Khanum of old, or so they say. I frowned at that, for in all I'd ever been taught, the Khanum had been depicted as wise and blessed. How is it like the Khanum? I asked. They were the first Imperials. Why do you say they were as dangerous as Pictus? The Augurs again exchanged an inscrutable look. The woman tapped, and Grelin, now panting with exhaustion, translated. Do you know of how sublimes such as you were made in mimicry of the grand and ancient Khanum, possessing a portion of their cognitive powers, memory, calculation, spatial conceptualization, and so on, but no more than that one portion, for we can duplicate little of what the first Imperials were? I do, I said. The man said, but this is not the whole of it. The Khanum of old could enter a fugue, an elevation of their minds to the highest levels, calling upon all their faculties. This made them capable of incomprehensible brilliance, feats of intellect even we cannot decipher. The woman. This is what augury is. It is an attempt to replicate this powerful elevation. We have only found a way for it to work with axioms, however, but no other sublime, and it is limited in the same ways. The man then, for the Khanum of old grew incomprehensible as they aged. The more brilliant they became, the more mad they grew, and inarticulate. They spoke languages no one knew, if they spoke at all. The woman, augury does this same thing, but over a much shorter period. Only 3 years, and the 3rd year can be treacherous. It is tempestuous and wild. That is when those of our order exhibit the most paranoias, the most impraticism. The man smiled weakly and tapped out. But it could be far worse. There are whispers of other attempts to replicate the Khanum, to remake the Emperor's bloodline anew. These efforts produce beings wild and savage, and full of strange passions and alien appetites. None of them lived past a year, we are told. I shuddered in my suit and tried to focus on the investigation. And you think Pictus was suffering a madness like this? The woman slowly tapped out a response. He did, yes. Why? I asked. The man's response was quick. Swallowing, Grelin translated. Because we came to believe he was contemplating self-determination. You mean? The woman. Suicide, yes. The man began tapping, and Grelin, very weak now, translated. He smelled it in the wind, and in sensing this, perhaps we hastened his choices. We tried to follow him during the last of these vanishings, said the woman. We used all of our arts to decipher the pattern of his movements, the possible places he could slip away to. And then we found him, said the man. We came upon him, standing in a tall open window on one of the upper floors, facing one of the high courtyards of the inner layer. The woman, head bowed, as if to jump, to send himself plummeting to his death. The man, a desperate thing, as if to escape. He heard us coming, said the woman, trying to step back in and pretend all was right. The man, but he tried to hide something he held in his hand, which he placed in his pocket. A flash of metal, said the woman, small and delicate and bright, a knife or so. We did not ask upon it, said the man, for he seemed on the border of a rage. We averted our eyes, apologized, and returned to our works. The days after this were frozen and fraught, tapped the woman. To him it had been a secret thing, and to have it known was a great harm. And then, tapped the man, and then, the female Augur's eyes trailed up the walls to stare at the ceiling. The accident, and the nature of this accident, it. They fell silent. The first time they had been inarticulate, I noticed. The male Augur leaned forward, peering into my eyes, his fingers tapping frantically on his board as Grelin spoke. We thought it was an intentional mistake, like a man setting a trap for himself, a noose hanging just so, and then allowing himself to proceed through his day, claiming to be unaware that he walked through his last moments of his own devising. The woman harshly, no, an accident. That was what it was. He was degrading, decaying. It is our fault that it happened. We should have done more to stop it. The man, but we did warn our superiors. They spoke to Pictus, and he convinced them that nothing was wrong. The woman, yet he could be convincing. This we know. Even as he was filled with despair, he... The man glanced at her, then looked to me and tapped out. A man can be many things. Despairing, yet confident. Mad, yet persuasive. And he could have loved us while still planning his death. The woman tapped out sharp, no! Tormented silence fell over them. I sat forward, sensing something lurking in his comments. I asked, why do you say he loved you doing such a thing? The man, hesitantly, because it should have been us who approached